exercise neither critique nor thought in bringing cuts that will devastate the American public and result in no job creation yet again for the last 45 days of this Congress. And with that, I yield.
The gentlelady yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Washington, a member of the committee,
I just rise just for a brief moment. I want to remind everyone we are on the Defense Appropriations Bill. This is the Flake Amendment, and we have cut approximately $15 billion from this defense bill. So I understand that there's a lot of concern about the other items here, but I just wanted to make that point. And I'd yield to the gentleman from Florida if you had anything you wanted to say at this point.
Well, I thank the gentleman for yielding. America's at war. We have soldiers fighting, losing their lives, having serious injuries, not only in Afghanistan, but in Iraq before that, but in Kosovo, in Bosnia. We have known war for a long time, and cutting the defense budget was unheard of. But yet the subcommittee has been able to recommend $14.8 billion in a very short period of time that we don't think has any negative effect on the national defense. The idea of the Flake Amendment might be a good idea. The subcommittee would like to be able to analyze it to make sure that it doesn't have any kind of a negative effect. And it may be that as we go through our process for this year that we would include that. But the subcommittee would very much like to have an opportunity to review this recommendation by the Flake Amendment. And I thank the gentleman for yielding.
Yield back my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Maryland rise?
I move to strike the last word, Madam Chair.
The gentleman from Maryland is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to speak to the underlying CR, to House Bill 1. And in particular, I want to speak to the fact that the American people have been very clear in their understanding that what we need to do is rebuild the country. We need to rebuild America. And everything that's being proposed by the Republicans in this continuing resolution undermines that goal. Now, rebuilding America means rebuilding our infrastructure, and we can talk about that infrastructure in a number of different ways. We can talk about rebuilding and investing in our physical infrastructure. That's roads, bridges, tunnels, highways, building up the strength of our physical infrastructure, which we all know we have to do. All you have to do is look at the newspaper, watch television, and you see examples every day of the crumbling infrastructure out there. So we've got to commit to that, but yet the Republican budget would undermine that objective. We have to rebuild the civic infrastructure of this country and keep it strong. What do I mean by the civic infrastructure? Well, I'm talking about service programs like AmeriCorps, the Corporation for National and Community Service, that creates an infrastructure that says to those people who want to volunteer and serve their country, 1,000 points of light, we're here to partner with you in doing that. Yet the Republican proposal would zero out that civic infrastructure. It's about investing in human infrastructure, building up human capital. That's education and health care and job training and innovation and technology. That's what human capital and human infrastructure is about. But we can look through this budget and find examples of cutting those priorities as well. How does that build up America? That tears America down. It doesn't build it up. And the last piece of this, if you're going to make America strong and keep it strong, is you got to preserve the natural resources of this country. And I looked at a couple of the numbers here in terms of what's being done that would hurt our environment under the proposal, and I'll just mention a couple of them. Cutting the Environmental Protection Agency by 29%, a $3 billion proposed cut. Now, how are you going to protect the environment if you cut the agency whose mission it is to do that by almost a third? That's essentially giving a free license to the polluters of America. So that's an unconscionable proposal. I come from Maryland. We care about the Chesapeake Bay in Maryland. It's been a national commitment to preserve this national treasure. the Chesapeake Bay. The President last year, through an executive order, made it a priority. There are partnerships at the federal, state, and local level and with the private sector to try to save and protect the Chesapeake Bay, but these proposals would undermine that, cutting over $1.7 billion from the Clean and Drinking Water State Revolving Funds. In Maryland, that would cost 1,000 jobs. This is an important source of financing for people to implement best practices to clean up the Chesapeake Bay. Why would we undermine that? There's other elements with respect to our natural resources. We've got to enforce pollution standards. EPA is in a position to do that, but not if we cut their funding. This would endanger rivers and streams that feed the Chesapeake Bay. And the last observation I'd make, this is sort of the overarching concern I have. I really believe in the idea of citizen stewardship, the idea that ordinary citizens step forward every day and decide they're going to commit themselves to cleaning up the environment. Our young people are committed to that, the next generation. But they want to see that the federal government is going to be a real partner in that effort. If we abdicate that responsibility, then there's going to be a lot of young people, a lot of ordinary citizens who are going to get disillusioned in terms of their own commitment to clean up the environment. We need to step forward. We need to stay strong, be a partner in protecting our environment, and what the Republicans have proposed in this continuing resolution would completely undermine that. I yield back.
The gentleman from Maryland yields back. For what purpose does the gentlelady from the District of Columbia rise?
Madam Speaker, I rise to strike the last word.
The gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes.
Madam Speaker, the underlying bill is a special insult to the Americans who voted for the new majority on the promise of jobs. They might forgive that they don't know how to produce jobs or haven't produced jobs yet, but they will never understand a bill that will make history on the number of jobs it affirmatively destroys. The Deficit Commission warned about cuts that are at the centerpiece of the majority bill, cuts that don't distinguish between short-term and long-term deficits, between the job-producing role of government investment during an economic turndown and needed savings to reduce long-term deficit, which must go on simultaneously. But the majority loses its focus entirely with its obsession on snatching local authority, local jurisdiction over local funds from the District of Columbia. While the majority wants to make draconian cuts in most federal programs, putting at high risk the economy itself, it simultaneously expands federal power into local funds and affairs of a local jurisdiction, the District of Columbia. 3 riders in this bill are anti-self-government riders having nothing to do with the underlying bill or the federal government. Particularly cruel, apart from the home rule violation, is the attempt to reimpose a provision that would keep the District of Columbia from spending its own local funds on needle exchange programs. If this is reimposed, a rider I got off during the last few years, it will cost lives and spread the virus as it did for the prior 10 years. But they're not through there. The majority takes a hardline approach. Even when I asked for the right to testify in the Judiciary Committee on yet another rider, a rider that would keep local funds in the District of Columbia from being spent on abortions for poor women. What business is it of any member of this body how the District of Columbia spends its own money it raises from its own residents and businesses? Madam Speaker, they go further. They try to reestablish a voucher program for new students, ignoring a compromise reached last Congress to allow every child now in a private school with a private school voucher to remain unto graduation. It disregards the fact that the district has the largest charter school, public charter school alternative in the United States. Almost half of our children go there. If the majority want to give money for alternatives to public education, then they've got to respect our choice. Republican support for vouchers only in the District of Columbia really exposes them for where they really stand on vouchers and school choice. There is wholesale support in this body for public charter schools, yet they will not bring a charter bill for the nation to the floor because polls and referenda in the states show there is zero national support for private school vouchers. Instead, Republicans single out the district and only the district, ignoring the city's own extraordinary, flowering public school charter program. Our choice, not someone else's who had nothing to do with us. You cannot try on this floor to slash federal power while dictating local policy and how local money should be spent. Those two don't go together. I yield back.
Gentlelady's time's expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Tennessee rise?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to strike the last word.
The gentleman from Tennessee is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, and I rise in opposition to this amendment. I could spend my time talking about the cuts to the low-income heating and energy program, LIHEAP. And that's important because there are many people in my district suffering through the worst winter in Memphis's recent history, and one of the worst winters in the country's history, that need help with their utility bills more than ever. And that's, I think, an awful thing, that when people are suffering from the inability to pay their utility bills, that we're cutting LIHEAP. I could talk about what we're doing to law enforcement, cutting the COPS program that puts police on the street and helps the local government put new policemen on the street to protect our people, and cuts to state and law enforcement spending. I could talk about the many calls and letters I've gotten from people concerned about Title X cuts that will affect 5,500 people in my community, women that won't be able to get family planning services, which include cancer screenings, annual exams in my city. I could talk about cuts to NPR, cuts to the National Institute of Health, where they're looking for cures for cancer and Alzheimer's and diabetes and other illnesses that affect our populace, which we need to cure as soon as possible. Or cuts to the FDA, $241 million to keep our food safe and preserve public health. Our cuts to Social Security and Medicaid. And a gentleman stopped me Saturday and said, please, you tell the people in Washington, don't mess with our Social Security and our Medicaid. But there are great cuts here, there as well. Or the $18 billion cuts to transportation. And Memphis is a transportation hub with rails and roadways and runways and river transportation. And that $18 billion cuts in transportation is going to hurt the growth of our economies and extending goods to market. I could talk about any of those items. I could talk about the cuts to legal services and the fact that more and more people need legal services in these economic times. The housing crisis hasn't left us, and people need representation. I could talk about cuts to education and historically black colleges and universities and Head Start programs. How are we going to compete, which we're not doing well in science and math, with the Chinese and the Indians if we cut these programs? I could talk about any and all those programs. But one thing I want to do is I want to read a column called Eat the Future. And Paul Krugman, a Nobel Prize-winning economist, wrote this. So I just think it's worthy to listen and have it heard on this floor. What Mr. Krugman said yesterday, Nobel Prize-winning economist. On Friday, House Republicans unveiled their proposal for immediate cuts in federal spending. Uncharacteristically, they failed to accompany the release with a catchy slogan, so I'd like to propose one: eat the future. I'll explain it in a minute. First, let's talk about the dilemma the GOP faces. Republican leaders like to claim that the midterm elections gave them a mandate for sharp cuts in government spending. Some of us believe that the elections were less about spending than they were about persistent high unemployment. But whatever. The key point to understand is that while many voters say that they want lower spending, press the issue a bit further, and it turns out what they really want to cut spending on other people. That's the lesson from a new survey by the Pew Research Center, in which Americans were asked whether they favored higher or lower spending in a variety of areas. It turns out that they wanted more, not less spending on most things, including education and Medicare. They're evenly divided about spending on aid to the unemployed and, surprise, defense. The only thing they clearly want to cut is foreign aid, which most Americans believe wrongly accounts for a large share of the federal budget. Pew also asked people how they would like to see the states close their federal budget deficits. Do they favor cuts in either education or health care, the main expenses states face? No. Do they favor tax increases? No. The only deficit reduction measure with significant support was cuts in public employee pensions, even where the public was evenly divided there. The moral is clear. Republicans don't have a mandate to cut spending. They have a mandate to repeal the laws of arithmetic. How can voters be so ill-informed? In their defense, bear in mind that they have jobs, children to raise, parents to take care of. They don't have the time or the incentive to study the federal budget, let alone state budgets, so they rely on what they hear from seemingly authoritative figures. And what they've been hearing since Ronald Reagan is their hard-earned dollars are going to waste paying for vast armies of useless bureaucrats. Payroll is only 5% of federal spending, and others. The bottom line is they've been hearing lies about the federal budget. They've been hearing lies about the federal bureaucracy. PolitiFact said that the biggest lie in 2009 was death panels. In 2010, it was government takeover of health care. If the Republicans get PolitiFact's Lie of the Year this year, they'll get the Irving Thalberg Lifetime Achievement Award. I hope they don't get it. Thank you, and I yield back the remainder of my time.
Gentleman from Tennessee yields back the balance of his time. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Hawaii rise?
Madam Chair, I move to strike the last word.
The gentlelady from Hawaii is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I don't believe there's anyone in this body who doesn't believe we must get a hold of our budget. I don't believe that there's anyone in this body who doesn't feel that when we do that, we've got to keep in mind that we serve the people. And we also must keep in mind that the one thing that we all are here to do is not to make their lives worse, but to try to make their lives better. And in addition to that, we are here to try to build that public confidence, which is the only way we will see the rise in our economy. Madam Chair, when I looked at the amendment, the thing that struck me the most is that in my district, there is a provision in here that zeroes out what is called the Native Hawaiian Housing Block Grant. It goes to zero. It's at $13 million now. In that same section, it also zeroes out the Department of Housing and Urban Development, Public and Indian Housing, revitalization of severely distressed public housing. It zeroes out Department of Housing and Urban Development, Public and Indian Housing. It zeroes out the Department of Housing and Urban Development, Community Planning and Development, Brownfields Redevelopment, just to name some of the programs that have been zeroed out. Let me tell you about the program of Native Hawaiians. This is a program that in our difficult economic times managed to build roads, managed to build programs. This is a program that was leveraged, so we had construction projects going, so we had housing development going, and we have zeroed them out. $13 million, zeroed them out. When we start to look at the budget and we start to think about what we must cut, the one thing I would like to think that we put a lot of credence in is which one of these programs are being leveraged and doing what we want. In addition to that, Madam Chair, look at community health systems. Everyone knows the Hawaiian Islands are islands. The only mode of transportation for our people between islands is expensive airfare. We don't have a ferry system. We definitely don't have roads that join our islands. It's airlines. For the underserved, they have to fly for health care. So community health systems, when we cut $1 billion out of that budget, $1 billion, imagine what that means for the provision of one of the most essential parts of a person's life, the feeling of knowing that you have health care. And we have cut that out of the budget. It's not only Hawaii, it's elsewhere. But think about what that means. And for small communities who rely on CDBG, the Community Block Grant Program, we've cut it approximately $2.5 billion. Why? That is what gets services to the people. This is what we have. We've already discussed the fact many times that we're cutting Head Start, 200,000 young kids who are not going to get that opportunity. We're cutting the Pell Grants, and that, of course, is going to make a reduction of about $800 per middle-class family. These are all part of this amendment as well. But for myself, as someone who represents this state that's gotten zeroed out on a program that has done exactly what government wants to see done, which is to make jobs, to give opportunities, we have cut it. Now, why would we do that? That is because we have not taken into consideration and remember what we're here to do. We're here to serve the people, Madam Chair. Thank you very much, and I yield back.
Gentlelady from Hawaii yields back the balance of her time. For what purpose does the gentleman from Rhode Island rise?
Madam Chair, I move to strike the last word.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
I rise in support of this amendment, but to oppose the underlying Republican continuing resolution. The spending bill before us is born out of an ideology that cuts right to the heart of our values as a country, and our priorities too. Because that's what a budget is supposed to reflect, our values and priorities as a nation. Our priorities are to strengthen the middle class, to reduce the deficit, and to create jobs. And we can see very clearly where my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have placed their priorities. It's not in the well-being of our workforce, not in the effectiveness of our classrooms, not in the safety of our neighborhoods. The priorities of the majority party are not with the people who have worked hard all their lives to earn a decent wage, buy a decent home, put their kids through school, and do what they can to keep their families and communities strong. The priorities of my friends on the other side of the aisle lay with America's most successful, the hedge fund managers, Wall Street financiers, and the investment bankers. Our Republican colleagues are pushing a spending bill that is irresponsible and ignores the needs of a healing nation. It cuts jobs, threatens American innovation, and it diminishes investments in rebuilding America. And to what extent? Well, I can tell you as a former mayor, I've seen firsthand the consequences of what is being proposed. Some of the most egregious cuts come at the expense of our most vulnerable and some of the most immediate job creators and economic growth engines that I know of. Our colleagues are cutting more than $340 million from the Community Service Block Grants and nearly $3 billion from the Community Development Block Grant Program. These are real dollars that are putting Americans back to work and helping small businesses and communities all across this nation. In addition, this budget slashes $1.6 billion in job training and cuts $120 million in alternative youth training that prepares kids for work in construction and other trades. And this is critical, the kinds of skills that are necessary to help us make things again here in America. Our colleagues, since assuming the majority last month, haven't offered a single piece of legislation that will create jobs. My friends on the other side of the aisle, at the same time that they're cutting billions of dollars in jobs programs that will put Americans back to work, they're continuing to support hundreds of billions of dollars in tax breaks to companies that are shipping our jobs overseas. While they cut 200,000 children from receiving an early childhood education through Head Start, they're giving $43 billion in subsidies to oil and gas companies. This Republican proposal, which cuts Pell Grants for 9 million students, making it difficult and for some impossible to continue to go to college, while at the same time continuing to give large agricultural corporations billions of dollars in federal subsidies. This is a question of priorities, and it's clear what the priorities of my friends on the other side of the aisle are. The Republicans are moving forward with a dangerous spending bill, one that continues to give rewards to the rich and literally guts the initiatives most meaningful to middle-class families. The work of reducing our deficit and controlling spending will be hard, to be sure. The fact of the matter is that we have to cut spending, and we have to be serious about it, but we have to do it responsibly. We cannot cut what makes us competitive and what helps us to innovate, succeed in the global economy, and ultimately create jobs. I know that the priorities that we have set are the priorities of getting people back to work. My friends, we owe it to the hard-working people of our nation who are struggling to get by, who are playing by the rules, but just waiting for someone to stand up for them rather than stand up for the rich guy on Wall Street. We owe it to America's hard-working people to have a serious and thoughtful debate in the hopes of producing a smart and sensible budget for our country. And that's why it's critical we ask our Republican friends, just what are your priorities? Do we have the courage to stand with our country's greatest assets, our hard-working people, or do we stand with the people who've enjoyed the most at the expense of everyone else? America's future depends on harnessing the innovation, education, and entrepreneurship of our fellow Americans. This budget proposal undermines that opportunity and endangers our recovery and makes our future less certain. I yield back the balance of my time.
For what?
Blake amendment.
Any other members seek recognition? The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Arizona. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed say no. No. In the opinion of the chairs, the ayes have it.
Madam Chairman, I ask for a recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Arizona will be postponed. The clerk will read.
Page 11, line 1, Operation and Maintenance, Army Reserve, $2,840,427,000. Operation and Maintenance, Navy Reserve, $1,344,264,000. Operation and Maintenance, Marine Corps Reserve, $275,484,000. Operation and Maintenance, Air Force Reserve, $3,291,027,000. Operation and Maintenance, Army National Guard, $6,454,624,000. Operation and Maintenance, Air National Guard, $5,963,839,000. United States Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces, $14,068,000. Environmental Restoration, Army, including transfer of funds, $464,581,000. Environmental Restoration, Navy, including transfer of funds, $304,867,000. Environmental Restoration, Air Force, including transfer of funds, $502,653,000. Environmental Restoration, Defense-wide, including transfer of funds, $10,744,000. Environmental Restoration, formerly used defense sites, including transfer of funds, $316,546,000. Overseas Humanitarian Disaster and Civic Aid, $108,032,000. Cooperative Threat Reduction Account, $522,512,000 to remain available until September 30th, 2013. Department of Defense Acquisition Workforce Development Fund, $217,561,000.
For what purpose is the gentleman
I
from...
move to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I will not use 5 minutes. The United States imports over 60% of all the oil we consume, most of which is used for vehicles. OPEC alone exports 2 billion barrels per year to the United States. At a cost of $90 per barrel, approximate current price, this represents a $180 billion tax that our oil dependence imposes on American consumers. Some OPEC countries that profit from our oil dependence are listed by the State Department as sponsors of terrorism, Madam Chairman. Fortunately, we're using Clean Air Act amendments to reduce our dependence on foreign oil. In April, automakers joined auto workers and President Obama to announce a landmark fuel efficiency standard that will improve auto efficiency 30% by 2016. These standards will save Americans $3,000 per vehicle for each car purchased in 2016 or later and reduce our oil dependence by 77 billion gallons of the life of the vehicles produced between 2012 and 2016. This efficiency improvement will keep $9.9 billion from being sent to OPEC countries. Section 1746 of this continuing resolution, the Republicans have proposed cutting off funding for implementation of the Clean Air Act, which is the law that has made these vehicle efficiency investments possible. Americans cannot afford, Madam Chairwoman, to send more money to Libya and Iran. I urge my colleagues to reject this attack on the Clean Air Act, and I yield back.
Gentleman from Virginia yields back the balance of his time. The clerk will continue to read.
Page 19, line 10, Title III, Procurement, Aircraft Procurement, Army, $5,254,791,000 to remain available for obligation until September 30th, 2013. Missile Procurement, Army, $1,570,108,000 to remain available for obligation until September 30th, 2013. Procurement of weapons and tracked combat vehicles, Army, $1,461,086,000 to remain available for obligation until September 30th, 2013. Procurement of ammunition, Army, $1,847,066,000 to remain available for obligation until September 30th, 2013. Other procurement, Army, including transfer of funds, $8,145,665,000 to remain available
for what
for
purpose
obligation.
is the gentleman from Kansas, right?
Madam Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk, it's number 87.
Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 87, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. Pompeo of Kansas.
The gentleman from Kansas is recognized for 5 minutes.
Madam Chairwoman, thank you. Let me begin by thanking Chairman Rogers and Ranking Member Dix for the hard work that they did on the Defense Appropriations Bill. It was yeoman's work in difficult and challenging fiscal times to present a defense budget that makes sense for America. And there is no one who's come to Congress as a member of this new freshman class who believes more strongly in making sure we have a strong national defense. It's for that reason that I moved to reduce spending in that budget by $502 million with the amendment that I am proposing. This $502 million is spread among various procurement and research and innovation programs, and it is money that was not requested by the Department of Defense. This $502 million could certainly go to some program that they had asked for, but it's in a place that used to be reserved for earmarks. There is no particular program to which this $502 million is attributed. It goes assertedly for innovation, but we all know that innovation occurs in the private sector, and that's what this new majority is about. It's wrong to add $500 million to our deficit for a series of programs with no particular purpose except for the needs of businesses that once survived on those very earmarks. And so while I am very pleased with the fact that this piece of legislation has removed earmarks and has moved us towards a great deal more transparency, I would urge my fellow members to vote for this amendment so that we can continue to get rid of the very vestiges of earmarks that voters asked us to get rid of. With that, I yield my time.
Gentleman yield. For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
I rise in opposition to the amendment, and again, this is an amendment that sounds good.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
The amendment sounds good, but unlike the Flake Amendment, which sounded good, and we'll learn more about it, that was a small amount of money. This is $500 million. A lot of people are of the opinion that government has the answer to everything. Government doesn't even have the questions to everything, let alone the answers. And how many people in this chamber have any idea how much technology our warfighters are using today, whether it's on the battlefield or whether it's in training, whatever it might be? How many people know how much was created by small business or large business? American industry produces good ideas most of the time. And much of what we see in the battlefield today and in the armed services came about because of innovations from small business and big business. Who knows? If somebody can tell me how much of those great systems that we create for our soldiers, how much of that came from innovation, how much of it came from the government, then I might change my mind. But we don't know today. You give the committee an opportunity, we'll find out. We'll find out how much this innovative, the SBIR, how much it provides compared to industry, large and small. But today we don't know the answer, and for a $500 million, we need to know the answer. So I don't object to the gentleman's amendment, really, but I do object to the gentleman's amendment because we don't know what the effect of it would be. We'd like to find out, and we think we owe it to the members of this House who are responsible for the national defense to find out for them. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back.
I strike the requisite number of words.
The gentleman is recognized.
I rise in very strong opposition to this amendment. The amendment deletes $60 million from procurement and $502.4 million from research and development. The sum of this funding is for innovative research and procurement from small businesses and unsolicited proposals. And the gentleman from Florida and myself, the gentleman from California, we've been here a long time. We have seen time after time when weapon systems like Predator and what's the Eagle? It's the Scan Eagle. I mean, there's all kinds of things that have happened because of small businesses. And when we made a decision to cut out earmarks for for-profit companies, one of the things that our committee did on a bipartisan basis with unanimity on both sides was to say, let's put some more money into this competitive program, the Small Business Innovation and Research Program, which it's at NIH, it's at a number of agencies. I think DOE has one. This is a way to bring small businesses into the Defense Department on a competitive basis, and they do things that the department needs to have done. So I rise with my chairman, Mr. Young, in strong opposition to this amendment. This was done to try to help the small business sector still make the contribution in the future for innovative new defense technologies. It's a good program and one that we should support. And I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The gentleman from Arizona, for what purpose does he rise? The gentleman from Arizona is recognized for 5 minutes.
I won't take the 5 minutes. I just want to rise in strong support of this amendment. The gentleman is right. This was not asked for by the Department of Defense. If we could save $500 million, money that will not affect the war or the war fighter, but we see these kind of programs all the time. And it's more as a way to generate economic activity than actually respond to any need. It assumes that the private sector out there and small businesses aren't innovating on their own unless we ask them to do it. Unless we specifically direct them or provide money for them to do it, that they won't do it at all. And that's just a false assumption. So I commend the gentleman for bringing the amendment to the floor, and I would be glad to yield him time if you want to take any more time on this. I yield to the gentleman from Kansas.
Thank you.
Gentleman from Kansas is recognized.
Madam Chairman, I'd just like to add that I came from that very sector, small business. Until 45 days ago, I was running one, and I understand how small business works. What we don't need is government taking our money and handing it back to folks. What we need is to be left alone. We need smaller government, and that's my core problem with the legislation for SBIRs. Government doesn't do a very good job of picking out which of those small businesses will be successful and which piece of technology will prove to be the one that will be good for our warfighters. If we'll shrink government, if we'll reduce taxes, then those small businesses will be successful. They'll provide those technologies, and they'll take wonderful care of every one of our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. Thank you. I yield back my time.
I thank the gentleman. I just want to say in closing, gentleman is exactly right. Any dollar that we provide in this program has to be taken from a small business or an individual through taxes. That is money that they can't use to innovate on their own and to actually go out and to respond to an RFP or to respond to needs of the Defense Department or to contract with them. They can do that without us having this specific program for them. So I urge support for the amendment. I yield back.
Gentleman from Arizona yields back the balance of his time. For what purpose does the gentleman from Massachusetts rise?
Support of the amendment.
Does the gentleman move to strike the last word?
Yes, I do.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
I welcome this amendment. I am struck when I hear some of my colleagues on the more conservative side, although this is not uniformly them, some on the conservative side are offering this amendment. We have this interesting dichotomy about whether or not the federal government can ever create jobs. In general, the conservative view is that the federal government never creates jobs. In the military area, somehow there's an exception. We're told here that there's a constructive relationship that can exist between smaller businesses and the military that we are told doesn't exist elsewhere. But the major reason for cutting this is we are, at this point, overextended militarily. Of course, there is unanimity here that we want America to be the strongest nation in the world. We are, of course, the strongest nation in the world, and no one is second. We are overcommitted in a number of areas. The military has become not the instrument of self-defense by the United States, but the instrument of projecting political influence. And projecting political influence militarily is often inefficient. So that reducing this spending as reducing other forms of military spending is essential if we are to begin to hold down the deficit. Now, I'm going to be talking tomorrow, and we're only talking in military terms of $500 million. In the terms of the defense budget, that appears to be relatively small. But it's more than enough than would be needed to fund the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Commodities Futures Trading Commission at the full level they need to regulate derivatives and hedge funds. We have a massive disproportion in which we overspend militarily far beyond what is needed to protect ourselves. Our military budget is the largest foreign aid program in the history of the world. It exists to provide subsidies to our wealthier allies who face no threat. And to the extent that we can reduce that, particularly in an area where the Defense Department itself did not even ask for the funds, we curb unnecessary spending. And as I said, tomorrow I will be offering an amendment to try and give the Securities and Exchange Commission the ability to regulate hedge funds, or at least to keep track of them. We'll be trying to offer funding to protect consumers from credit card abuse and trying to provide funding to regulate derivatives. Taken together, those three agencies are being cut by an amount smaller than that $500 million, and we will be told that we can't afford that. So I welcome the gentleman pointing out the inconsistency between those who say that the private sector should be left to its own and the public sector does not become the job creator here in this way. And I welcome also the chance to begin, as I will be supporting the amendment of the gentleman from Arizona, this massive disproportion in which we overspend militarily, and I say overspend because it is far beyond what is needed for the legitimate defense of the United States. It has become a form of staking out political interest, and it comes at very great cost to virtually everything else we want to do, as well as constraining deficit reduction. I yield back.
Gentleman from Massachusetts yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia, a member of the committee, rise?
Madam Chairwoman, I rise to strike the requisite number of words.
Gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 5 minutes.
I rise in opposition to this amendment in support of what the ranking member of the Appropriations Committee has said, as well as Chairman Young. They say that because they have substantial years of experience behind them. Now, what Mr. Frank has suggested has merit, but to support this amendment is a non sequitur to that argument. The gentleman from Arizona, at least he's consistent. The gentleman offering the amendment, I'm sure that it's well intended, but let me try to explain why it is counterproductive. It defines the phrase penny wise and pound foolish. In fact, where we have made our greatest strides within the defense budget is in small business innovation. There are half a dozen very large defense contractors. They serve our country well. They take good ideas. They hire people. They develop them. They achieve major procurement contracts with the Defense Department. But for the most part, they don't come up with the innovations. It's small businesses throughout the country that come up with those innovations. For example, the Predator drone that has been the most successful weapon in Afghanistan, it was an earmark for small businesses that came up with an innovative idea. Much of our IED success has come from small businesses. Much of the simulation, the training that we provide our troops so they don't have to put their lives at risk, but rather can achieve the kind of training that gives them the skill set to represent us with such courage and effectiveness on the battlefield, that comes from small business innovation. And what we are trying to do now is to put a small sum of money together so that thousands of small businesses throughout the country can compete for those small grants. Now, the fact is, as much as I respect the defense contract, it's not necessarily in their interest to innovate, to come up with cost-cutting efficiencies, because it means you have to reduce personnel. Oftentimes, it exposes the fact that we're paying more than we need to for innovative approaches to securing our country. It's the small businesses of this country that really provide the ability for us to find the highest level of efficiency and effectiveness within our Defense Department. For $500 million, we will save thousands of lives, and we know we'll save tens of billions of dollars in the long run. That's what this program is all about. It's a departure from the way we've done things. It's all about saving money, not relying upon big business or big government, but letting small businesses flourish who otherwise couldn't get the capital, wouldn't have the investors, couldn't pull the personnel together and pay them long enough to be able to fulfill the potential of a great idea. So this funds great ideas, ideas that make our troops safer, that enable us to let our dollars go further, and in fact enables our nation to be far more secure. This is just the kind of program we ought to be funding more of in the Defense Department. And that's why I would strongly urge defeat of this amendment. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Kansas. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
I ask for a recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Kansas postponed.
Page 23, line 1, aircraft procurement, Navy, $16,170,868,000 to remain available for obligation.
For what
until
purpose does
September
the gentleman
30th,
from Illinois rise? Gentleman from Illinois is recognized for 5 minutes.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to introduce my amendment to cut funding for the V-22. a hybrid helicopter airplane that was in development for more than 25 years, cost the lives of 30 individuals before it ever saw combat, and still does not meet operational requirements in Iraq. Cost overruns have plagued the V-22 since its development. Initial estimates projected $40 million per plane, but today it's exploded to $120 million per plane, a threefold increase. This amendment would save $415 million for the remainder of fiscal year 2011 by cutting funding for the V-22 from the Air Force and Navy's aircraft procurement accounts. In 2009, the GAO found that the Marine Corps received 105 V-22s. Of course, fewer than half, only 47, were considered combat deployable. But on any given day, there are an estimated 22, fewer than 1 in 4, ready for any combat. This is largely due to unreliable parts and maintenance challenges. It was reported that 13 of the V-22 parts lasted only 30% of their life expectancy, and 6 lasted less than 10%. In addition, the GAO found that the V-22 did not have weather radar, and its ice protection system was unreliable. Not me, GAO. So that flying through icy conditions is prohibited on this plane. Can't do it. Icy conditions that are often found in Afghanistan. Oddly enough, the V-22 also had problems in dusty conditions, which coincidentally also exist and is common in Afghanistan. So I ask my colleagues, why do we continue to fund the boondoggle? The majority claims to have made some tough choices in this bill. Apparently, this includes continuing to fund a plane that Dick Cheney called a, quote, turkey, and tried to kill 4 times when he was Secretary of Defense. It should also be noted that Dick Cheney did not often meet a defense program he didn't like. So this would be very telling to everyone here. In order to continue funding this plane, this Congress proposes steep cuts to be made on the backs of the most vulnerable citizens. H.R. 1 puts the safety of American families at risk. The bill eliminates cops hiring, a program that will put 1,330 fewer cops on our streets. Bill cuts SAFER program, which means there are 2,400 fewer fighter fighters protecting our communities so that we can build a plane that can't be under icy conditions, can't fly when there's sand, and only 1 out of 4 is ever used at any given time. The majority has made short-sighted choice to cut $1.3 billion from community health centers, which according to the CEO of the National Association of Community Health is equivalent to terminating health care to the entire population of Chicago, or to anyone living in the states of Wyoming, Vermont, North or South Dakota, and Alaska combined would have to eliminate their health care. Why? For a plane that cannot fly when it's icy, we cannot fly when it's dusty. And where are we at? In a combat situation where we need it to do both things. Look, if this weren't enough, the bill also eliminates Title X funding, which provides services for cancer screening, annual exam, STD testing, contraceptives. H.R. bill would also cut $5 billion from the federal Pell Grant. I want everybody to hear this. $5 billion from the federal Pell Grants. In Illinois, this will reduce financial aid to 61,000 poor students. And as I have suggested earlier here today, maybe as members of Congress, maybe because we are in the top 1% of wage earners in the United States of America, people of America understand we make $175,000, each and every one of us. And there are over 150 millionaires in this body. Maybe we don't care. Maybe you can cut the Pell program because you don't care whether kids get ahead and are able to go to college. But some of us should, especially those of us that have been blessed with the riches of wealth in this nation and allowed to be able to serve in this body. And so I simply say, let the kids go to school. Let there be health care for the most vulnerable of Americans. And all we will be missing is this boondoggle of a hybrid helicopter that does not serve the purpose for which it was proposed. I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania rise?
Mr. Speaker, I rise to strike the last word and to speak in opposition to the amendment that was just proposed by the gentleman from Illinois. What's that? Okay. Well then.
Gentleman from Florida will state his inquiry.
Do we have an amendment before the House at the present time?
We do not.
Well, then I offer my amendment.
You can still strike the last word and speak on that subject.
Well, I'd like to strike the last word then and speak in the.
The gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you.
The requisite number of words.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak in behalf of this very, very significant and important piece of military hardware, the V-22 Osprey. Notwithstanding the discussion in which the GAO has made a report, the fact of the matter is this is an instrument which has proven itself in the theater of war. Those who have been the most significant advocates for this very, very important piece of airplane have been those who have used it in the theater of war, the United States Marine Corps. This has been used successfully in 14 different deployments, most recently in Iraq and Afghanistan, and it's proven itself time and time again. Proven itself to have the flexibility to be able to accommodate the new challenge that the Marines are facing in these dramatically challenging circumstances. The functionality to be able to respond quickly to moving troops, not just to insert most effectively in a time fashion, but to be also able to get there as quickly as possible in real-world combat situations that are changing as we speak. Day and night raids. This is the instrument that the Air Force, Special Forces, and the Marines have identified as among the most important. The instrument that rushes to the front and medevacs the soldiers. I just visited Walter Reed just about a month ago, and the ability to get soldiers who are injured from the front lines back to the United States in time is remarkable. This is one of those instruments that allows them to do it. It's a technology which has been proven, not just in the battlefield, but has also been proven by its performance. They have worked out the kinks. They have paid for it. This is the thing that the Marine Corps is asking for that's consistently within the boundaries of the existing defense budget. The soldiers on the front line are asking for the V-22 Osprey because it helps them do their job. We must stand in support of the soldiers who are doing the work defending our nation most effectively. They are the ones who are proving that it works.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois rise? The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 63, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. Gutierrez of Illinois.
The gentleman from Illinois is recognized for 5 minutes on his amendment.
Thank you. I've already used my 5 minutes prior, so I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose, gentleman from Colorado, rise?
Mr. Chairman, I rise in opposition to the Gutierrez amendment.
The gentleman from Colorado moves to strike the requisite number of words and is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Gutierrez amendment, the gentleman from Illinois, would do an across-the-board general reduction to the aircraft procurement accounts for the Navy and the Air Force. The total reduction at $405.1 million would be transferred to the spending reduction account. And let me just say he spoke to the V-22 aircraft that the United States Marine Corps uses today in Iraq and Afghanistan. And let me tell you, as a former infantry officer in the United States Marine Corps, I can't speak highly enough of the V-22 aircraft. There is no replacement right now if that aircraft were suspended in service. The CH-46 aircraft was put in the fleet in 1964 and retired in 2004, and the CH-53, I believe, in 1966. These old airframes are retiring. They need to be replaced. The V-22 is an effective aircraft serving our Marines in the field in places like Afghanistan and Iraq with the kind of effort that our troops deserve. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Rise.
$415 million. I strike the requisite number of words.
Gentleman's recognized.
The amendment would remove $415 million total from Navy and Air Force procurement accounts. This funding would reduce the number of V-22 Ospreys from the DoD portion of the bill. The Osprey has proven itself under combat conditions to be safe, effective, survivable, and maintainable, and is meeting all operational taskings. I have actually flown on the Osprey, and I feel it's a very safe airplane. Today, flight hours are increasing rapidly and will exceed 100,000 flight hours in the first quarter of calendar year 2011. 46% of these hours have been flown in the last 2 years. The first combat deployment was September 2007. From that time to the present, the V-22 has been in the following deployments: 3 deployments in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom, 3 deployments in support of Operation Enduring Freedom, 3 Marine Expeditionary Unit deployments. The Marine Corps has procured nearly 2/3 of the required fleet of aircraft, 250 out of a total of 360. The program is currently in the 4th year of a 5-year multi-year procurement, and we only give multi-year procurements on programs that we think are highly stable. This is a proven aircraft, and I urge rejection of this amendment. And this is an important program, one that the Special Forces are going to use, and I think we have to be very careful. This, for the Marine Corps, this is one of their essential programs that they have strongly supported for many, many years, and it would be a devastating blow to them not to finish this procurement.
Jimmy yields back. For what purpose?